Our next conversation is with Mr. Rudolph Hanamji. We are talking about a ForEx exchange seminar. It's a challenge that businesses and individuals across Trinidad and Tobago know all too well. But what are the real solutions? What are some good solutions? And how can the private sector play a role in unlocking ForEx opportunities? So joining us this morning, Mr. Rudolph Hanamji, he's going to discuss the critical issues and a little bit about this seminar that is upcoming. Good morning, Mr. Hanamji.
Good morning to you and your viewers. Wonderful to be here.
Thank you. So, Mr. Hanamji, just to start off, the ForEx issue has been a long-standing challenge in Trinidad and Tobago. What makes this seminar different from previous discussions or attempts to say?
It's a very good question because far too often over the years we've had enough conversation and not enough implementation, and I think Trinidad and Tobago suffers from an implementation crisis. And some of these other crises are really symptoms of that bigger problem. So on Monday the 17th at the Trinidad and Tobago Chamber headquarters, you actually have a number of chambers coming together with the private sector to position the discussion around conversion of ideas into action. The Maritime Capital, under the Maritime Capital group, they have decided as a responsible corporate citizen to underwrite and promote this discussion because they have for far too long been inundated, as have most of the financial institutions in Trinidad and Tobago, with complaints and reports of many businesses, in particular the SMEs, facing a deficit in accessing foreign exchange. The Trinidad and Tobago Chamber of Commerce released a report a few months ago in which 34% of respondents and most of the members of their chamber, as well as the Chaguanas Chamber and the Greater San Fernando Chamber of Commerce, most of those members are SMEs, and 34% of them reported having to wait over 4 weeks for foreign exchange access. So even the man in the street is quite familiar with the problem. And even the government itself, which is, by the way, the largest user of foreign exchange because of investment projects, even the government itself is strapped for foreign exchange in contemporary times. So that's what's going to make it different. The private sector is coming forward with a concerted objective of squaring the problem and delivering after the fact a roadmap that the members of the private sector can lobby in reference to and work hand in hand with the government to finally solve this problem.
Right. So, Mr. Hanamji, can you possibly go into some of the, talk about some of the short or medium term solutions that will be explored during this seminar?
Certainly. You know, there is in Trinidad and Tobago a managed float system. It's not a free market exchange rate, which of course would change based on supply and demand. The central bank and the Ministry of Finance and other agencies look at the exchange rate, and they have been able to maintain it at a certain level. And of course, there's been a lot of talk about whether that should shift completely. One of the solutions is actually a much more strategic managed approach, so that over time you can help change the demand side by having slight moderate nominal increases, particularly in certain spaces, so that consumers' demand will reflect that nominal shift in the price. So a simple example might be that the average person who travels frequently that person may decide, instead of taking 3, I may reduce my trips to 2 per year. That's more on the consumer side. In terms of the business sector, there is a demand for much more transparency in relation to how Forex is allocated. Because, of course, the central bank has reported very effectively and transparently that it does inject into the financial services space what it deems as adequate foreign exchange to cover the necessary demands of the public, at least as far as its projections present it to the bank. However, many businesses are getting different positions from their financial institutions. There is not enough accountability, and of course there is the perception that larger institutions, larger companies have an inequitable access to foreign exchange. So both on the business and at the retail side, there are some of those shorter term solutions that we can look at. And then in the medium term framework, we have to look at more innovative solutions. Now, on the panel, apart from Mr. Baldath Miraj, Mr. Kiran Singh, and Ms. Vashti Gaidin, who represent the 3 chambers I mentioned earlier, you're also going to have the head of the University of the West Indies Economics Department here in St. Augustine, Dr. Conrad, and of course, senior economist Dr. Arjun, as well as noted businessman Sean Rampasad of Ramps Logistics. The 3 of them do have some very unique considerations that really haven't been widely discussed in the public. And I don't want to give away the discussion, but there are some solutions around currency swapping, financial paper, and other mechanisms that businesses can use to collaborate more effectively and engage in foreign exchange earnings development work. So there's going to be that level of conversation taking place in the room.
Right. So just in case our viewers did not know, so this seminar is a collaboration between Maritime and the Chamber. So can you talk a little bit about the Chamber's role in advocating for these Forex solutions?
So the Trinidad and Tobago Chamber of Industry and Commerce, the Greater San Fernando Chamber of Commerce, and the Chaguanas Chamber of Industry and Commerce, of course, represent three diverse, broad segments of the business community. And they have all, in their own ways, been advocating over the last few years. This is not a contemporary issue alone. They have been engaging with government officials, past and present administrations. They have been providing the government with data, access to their members, and a number of recommendations every year when we are preparing for the national budget. These chambers have submitted some of the recommendations and others that I have mentioned. Most of them, they are also encouraging their members to access as many of the state incentives for manufacturing and export capacity development. So both in the light manufacturing and in the services sectors, there is a lot of potential for our local businesses to export up the islands and internationally, and that can of course help them to earn their own foreign exchange. But at the same time, they are mindful that often members have no choice but to consider going outside of the formal network of foreign exchange access. So the members want to operate within the formal system. They want to find a mechanism to keep whatever foreign exchange they do earn in the local market, but at the same time have access to it on a consistent and transparent basis. So that is what the chambers have been advocating for. In this year, there is of course an opportunity for the private sector to have a little bit more gravitas, if you will, when they're speaking to the administration, because as we all are aware, this is a season when policymakers, politicians tend to listen a little bit more. So we think that this is a right time to engage in this conversation in the first quarter of 2025. And again, that's why Maritime Capital had the foresight to really engineer this entire session.
One of the key topics is unlocking untapped opportunities. And I'm not sure if that's a theme for the seminar, but can you share an example of an opportunity that businesses or investors may be overlooking? So just to give us a little insight on what we can expect.
Well, one particular area that I have a personal interest in, because I was part of developing this mechanism over a decade ago, and I'm so happy to see it come to fruition, is the recent launch of the updated Special Economic Zones Authority legislation. And that legislation actually allows greater access for small and micro and medium enterprises to consider investing in operating a special economic zone where they can hive out some of their operations and actually export those and benefit from major tax incentives and other benefits under that legislative framework. So a simple example might be a technology company that is operating in Trinidad and Tobago with the high levels of growth in Guyana, for example. If they are able to navigate that space, they might be able to offer those services using homegrown talent right here in Trinidad and Tobago and earn some foreign exchange in Guyana. Now, that is, of course, a little easier said than done. And again, that is why if the business community is willing to unlock its capital, to return some of its foreign exchange into the economy and make these types of investments, you need to see an even greater response, a proactive response from the government, because even though there are a suite of incentives, there are still a few blockages that need to be removed to ensure that these unlocked opportunities really are knocked down. And remember, at the end of the day, if the business community thrives, then there is additional employment, there's increased taxation, so there's an overall benefit to the entire country.
Right. Mr. Hanamji, I just want to go back a little bit, like way back. Can you talk about your role in this seminar? What are you bringing to this?
Well, interestingly, I am one of the country's specialists in the area of public innovation, investment promotion, and innovation. Earlier in my career, I would have been a part of several national conversations and national plan developments, so the tourism policy, the national audiovisual sector development policy, the international financial centers investment policy. So what I hope to offer in spaces like this is that broad perspective on how we can structurally re-engineer the economy and how we can definitely utilize all of the elements of our value proposition. I'll tell you something. We as Trinidad and Tobago citizens take several things that we have going for us for granted. There are a number of challenges that we are facing. However, with a 70% brain drain data point, and I mean that data point is debated from time to time, but take it for what you will, it means that we are actually fueling the growth and development of other nations with our people. Now, one of the things that we've always looked at from a national development lens is how can we attract our citizens in the diaspora to actually return to Trinidad and Tobago and to bring all of their expertise and innovative ideas and their energy and, of course, their income tax dollars back to the country. So my assistance here is really to ensure that Maritime Capital has been able to coordinate and to manage the activity. And then at the end of the day, we can publish and produce this roadmap that is critical for taking us forward. but it must be framed within the ecosystem within which we operate, and it must be true to investment and capital development principles that will provide robust outcomes. This has to be sustainable. It's not a flash in the pan fix, and people have to commit to it for the short to the long term, and on both sides, not just the private sector, but of course the government and the administration.
Right. So, Mr. Hanamji, what can we expect in terms of the outcome of this event, and will there be any follow-up actions or recommendations for policymakers?
So you will expect a very interactive, and I must say there are only a few seats left. Just quickly, you can reach out to registration at maritimefinancial.com, or you can use LinkedIn or Google and simply search for the event, contact the Trinidad and Tobago Chamber of Commerce, register today, because it's going to be a highly interactive session where the panelists will be sharing, as I said, some of their insights that have not necessarily been picked up in the broader ecosystem. And then they're going to engage with attendees to ensure that the attendees' input is incorporated into that roadmap. That roadmap will be a user-friendly one-pager, if you will, that the private sector can easily reference in moving forward, so that at any given moment when they have an opportunity to engage policymakers or to even enhance their own circle's understanding, they can use that as a tool. Then some of the other next steps, the chambers will continue to engage, and we are sort of signaling the interest in developing with the government a foreign exchange resolution committee, working group, if you will, where both the public and private sector and other stakeholders are brought together, given a mandate and the resources and a timeline to actually get these blockages unlocked. So again, I don't want to give away too much of it. We can always come back to you after the fact and share, but please come down and have your voice, do your part in solving this challenge.
Right. So you've shared how viewers or interested person can get in contact with you or reach out to attend the seminar, but who is this seminar open to?
So primarily, Maritime Capital, as a company that believes in empowerment through education, they have undertaken to host sessions like these that really and truly are open to small, micro, medium enterprises and investors, individual persons out there in the wider citizenry who are interested in this area. They may have a personal interest in becoming an entrepreneur or investing their monies to earn foreign exchange, but they might also just be patriotic people who want to utilize their influence to ensure that the right outcomes are had in terms of the policy and unlocking these opportunities. So at the outset, we would say if you're a small, micro, medium enterprise, or also an individual investor interested in accessing foreign exchange, then you have a vested interest to show up and be there and be part of the conversation. After the fact, of course, we will be issuing publications and content around the conversation, so the wider public will benefit. And if I did not say it earlier, there is no cost to attending the session. Maritime Capital has undertaken this, as I said, as a good corporate citizen, and they are happy to be able to bring these parties together to have the conversation.
Yeah. When is the event, Mr. Hanamji?
So there's still a few more days for people to get on board. It's this Monday coming, the 17th of February. It's from 10 a.m. to 12:30, and there will be a networking lunch afterwards. It's being held at the Trinidad and Tobago Chamber of Industry and Commerce's headquarters in West Moorings. And as I said, we are also partnering with the Greater San Fernando Chamber of Commerce and the Chaguanas Chamber of Commerce and the UWI Department of Economics and Ramps Logistics. So many persons are already registering from across the country, and we're expecting a diverse audience representative of all of our geographies and experiences, even persons from Tobago have shown their interest.
Got it. So before we wrap up this segment this morning, is there anything that you would like to say to the viewers, just to, cement everything that has already been said?
As citizens, just take it from a very individual lens. This is a matter that affects us all, and there is the cut and thrust of daily life where we all have to focus on other things that are important to us. However, it is a moment where we can leverage our voices better. And if anything, just read a little bit more and go behind or lower than just the headlines. Take the time to truly understand the challenges that we are facing, because the energy sector has been the main contributor of foreign exchange for so long that any negative impact on that sector is going to have a knock-on effect on our daily lives. So that's just my personal call to action. Take a little time, each of us get to understand the problem better and figure out how you can use your influence to make Trinidad and Tobago a better country. Do your part, because if we all do our part together, we can build a better Trinidad and Tobago.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with that sentiment, Mr. Hanamji. Thank you so much for joining me on the program this morning. It was very insightful, and I do hope that our viewers take what you are saying and, step out and really read beyond the headlines and just come to the event just to see what it's about, just to learn something new, learn something more. But I really appreciate you joining me.
Thank you very much for having us. And here's to a safe carnival for everyone. Take care.
Thank you. Bye-bye. So that was Mr. Rudolph Hanamji of ForEx Matters seminar, which is coming up on Monday, the 17th of February from 10 a.m. at the Chamber of Industry and Commerce, Trinidad and Tobago. We're going to move along with the program this morning.